Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it's time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me, as always, is the other Real to Real Talker, Paul Britton. Welcome, Paul.
Whoop, whoop.
And we are very excited to once again be visited by a dear friend of the show, Kristen Smith. It is great to see you again. It has been too long.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. In fact, this episode is actually crafted around something that we all talked about that is going to actually feature you and your thoughts predominantly. I don't know if we're jokingly calling it Kristen Passionately Defends or if that's just sort of
100%. I'm throwing it up there. Boom.
Yeah.
I have a lot of hot takes.
Yeah. And if there's one thing we've learned in our times together, Kristen, is that your takes are all worth listening to. And so,
For sure. Hot or not.
You have brought us a slate of movies that you wanted to talk about. So what I'd like for you to do, Kristen, if you would, is sort of talk us through and set us up. What did you bring us, and what is the thing you'd like to have us focus on this conversation?
All right. So the three movies I brought to y'all is M. Night Shyamalan's The Village,
Mhm.
The Wachowskis' Speed Racer, and Michael Mann's movie version of Miami Vice. All three of these are movies that are very mixed. In some cases, they were pretty trashed whenever they first came out.
Mhm.
And as I've gotten them, I have found that, they aren't some of them aren't necessarily great. I feel like there's more good than people remember. And I would love people to revisit these and kind of try to strip away what your expectations of it and, hopefully be able to see the good that, I cherish.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And you brought us those three movies, a slate of movies that for me it was kind of a cool experience because I have been one to passionately defend The Village quite a lot. But for myself, I was not familiar with Speed Racer and having not watched it, and I'd only seen Miami Vice once. And now you and I we've talked about Michael Mann on this show previously, and so
Big time.
it was one of those movies. Yeah, often. It was one of those movies that upon rewatch, I was like, I kind of have a different spin now than when I first saw it. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. And Kristen, if you're ready, I would love to just jump on in. And
Oh, heck yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to start with the one that I'm most familiar with, and that's The Village. So tell us, get us started. Because this movie gets a lot of heat. I don't want to say hate, but it gets a lot of heat.
Yes. And so when I first watched this, it was a very strange experience.
Mhm.
I went to a summer film camp at Chapman University in Orange, California, my summer before my senior year. And one of the dudes who actually worked on an Oscar-winning sound department was really, really into this movie. So imagine that we watched Chinatown, we watched Jaws, we watched Schindler's List, and we watched The Village.
One of these things is not like the other. I will say
And
that.
it was just really? This is a movie that you like? And there were parts I kind of liked, but of course, of all the things, I will not defend the script. The script is trash.
Okay.
There is a kernel of what could have potentially been done, in a sort of Roger Eggers Witch sort of way that could have been used to turn this into a better story. But it's a muddled mess. And the dialogue is really weird. And the more you try to think about it, the more it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I will say I think the story works better than the dialogue. I think the story is fine. I personally don't have a problem with the story. The dialogue, they were going for something, and it's fine that they were going for something, but it doesn't necessarily, they didn't need to necessarily go for the something.
Yeah. But then as I've kind of revisited it, because with the exception of a few of his movies, I am a giant M. Night Shyamalan defender.
Okay.
Like last year, Old was my second favorite movie of the year.
Oh
Oh
wow.
wow.
Yeah, I can passionately
Mm.
defend Old. I have so many opinions about
Oh
Old.
my goodness.
Even
Even the
great.
ending?
Yes, I even ranked
Oh my
it.
god.
I even ranked it above worst person.
Oh, I'm already
Oh my
planning your next
god.
visit. I'm already planning your next
I
visit.
have so many things. Next episode, we
No,
will
we don't
defend
need to
it.
talk about Old again. We've already done an episode on Old. That's plenty.
But when you look at the rest of the village,
Mhm.
I mean, even with the weird dialogue, you have a cast that's amazing.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
breakouts like Bryce Dallas Howard, who's like one of my favorite lead actress performances, period.
Mhm.
Which she just like goddamn nails.
Yeah.
You have Joaquin Phoenix, you have William, rest in peace, William Hurt,
Yep.
who I miss so much. Sigourney. Like you have a lot of people. Even like an early Jesse Eisenberg is in there.
Yeah.
Like there's
That-
a lot of people, and like for all of the wonkiness of the dialogue, a lot of times they can do their best to sell it. Like whenever Joaquin and Bryce Dallas Howard have like one of their big moments, like the conversation is kind of odd, but it also is kind of sweet and works in a very strange way. And visually, I mean, this is it's lensed by Roger fucking Deakins. Like,
Yeah.
it looks fantastic. Like, of
Yeah.
all the things, like, M. Night Shyamalan is probably worst as, well, he's worse as an actor, but, like, not that great as a writer, pretty much.
yeah.
But as a visual storyteller, like, to me, like, this is how some of the best, like, cutaway shots, like, just like a slow push in on a like a lantern at night, which could like finding those like really small moments to be able to like set a mood.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of like really interesting cuts, really like beautiful lighting. You have an amazing like production designer. You have the score. Like so many of these components are so good. If
Mhm.
it's kind of like, if the story is what stops you, I think just look at it and be like, okay, if I don't like this story, if I don't like this dialogue, let me see if I can go in understanding this and be able to like recognize all of these really, really nice things. Like the parts that frustrate me really frustrate me, but then there's other times where I'm just like, this is so good.
Yeah, there's something that Shyamalan in this movie does with music that is so well executed. The scene where it's just, I believe it's a cello that plays as there's that moment of tension where the monsters are approaching. The use of slow motion and things like that. It's funny because when I saw this movie, Kristen, the first time, and this was literally an opening night experience for me. I wanted to see this movie.
Yeah.
And I came out of it really, really loving it, and then was just befuddled by the reviews. It isn't until I'm rewatching it over the years several times that I begin to understand a little bit about how the dialogue gives too much away. If you pay close, if you know the secret, sure, that helps. But there are pieces of the story that are they're glaring in terms of sort of plot hole, I guess. But it for me, it wasn't until rewatch that I realized maybe this is what people had against this. But when you talk about cinematic elements, this movie for me is successful in terms of what he was attempting to do. So that's sort of my take on it, and I'm glad that this is one you defend. So, Paul, give us your take on this movie.
So this movie sort of predates Rotten Tomatoes, so I had no idea that there was a negative backlash to this movie. I went and saw it. I loved it. The people I went and saw it with loved it, and that was it. Like that was my like, oh, okay, cool. And then like years later, I it just came up randomly somehow or something, and like, or I read something where it was like, oh yeah, Village, which nobody liked, and I'm like, wait a sec, what? I love that movie. Are you kidding me? Like, come on. I'm with you. In your defense of M. Night Shyamalan, I even liked Old. Second best movie of last year. I mean, it's not in my top 20 of last year, but it's certainly, not in my bottom 20 either. It's right in the middle there. But what a lot of his movies, more recent movies especially, fail at, I feel like this movie does just fine with, which is just actually having an ending that kind of makes sense and isn't a complete and total utter letdown. It's like, okay, cool. That's really cool, and it makes sense, and I get it. And it's sad. I mean, the interesting thing, the thing I like about this ending especially is that it's really tragic. It adds so much layers to not all of the characters, but all of the elders in the village, that it's just like instantly they go from these, hyper scaredy cat, like, oh, we can't do this, to like, oh my God, these are people living with trauma, and this is what they all did to escape their trauma. And that's fucking crazy. It adds such a great, and hashtag spoiler alert, it adds such a great layer to this movie that I mean, it makes it instantly rewatchable, because you want to see, much like I See Dead People, whatever. I can't think of the name of the movie. Thank you. Much like The Sixth Sense, it makes you want to go back and see. All right, like I know I would not have figured this out, but how does this impact and change all of the characters and all their motivations? And it really does add to that the desire to see it again. And that's, beyond all the technical stuff, which you're 100% right. This is probably, I would, if anybody said this, this wasn't his technically top-notch best movie, I'd have a really hard time, understanding their argument against it or in favor of any of his other ones. But yeah, I really like this one. So you're in a safe space with The Village here. So
excellent. So Kristen, for those who are watching, if you had one last opportunity to, sell this film to people and say you've got to check it out, because we agree with you. Yeah. What would be your way of establishing that for those who are watching?
I mean, I assume if like you're watching, you love movies. Like, if you watch it for any reason, watch it because it's gorgeous looking. Like, everyone can agree Roger Deakins is like one of the greatest, directors of photography of all time. And this is honestly one of my favorite works from him. So like, if you just like really good looking movies, this is one of like my all-time favorite Deakins movies.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Interesting. I mean, Deakins, I'm going to say, I'm not going there, but cool. Like, all right, you can, that's a whole other conversation. We better let's move to the next one before we fall down.
We should do an episode, each one of us bringing a Deakins movie.
I'm down for that.
A dozen Deakins movies, and then
we'll do a marathon episode. All right. Well, Kristen, from M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, we move into our next take, and that's going to be on Miami Vice.
We're doing Miami Vice.
Yeah. And so, again, as before, get us started on your hot take on Miami Vice, because this one got a lot of more than heat.
Very much so.
Or less than heat, really.
So for this movie, I was similarly, when I watched it, I was kind of like, I guess it's interestingly filmed. But I mean, this was also in the era where digital filmmaking was still kind of crappy. Like, it was still kind of like, we pretty sure this is the future, but also this kind of looks like you picked up a home movie camera and just filmed the entire movie.
And the whole idea of mounting a camera on anything was like, no, we can't do that. If it's not in a hand, we're not making a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess like in watching it just like compared to everything else.
Yeah.
Even compared to Collateral, which, Collateral is probably uses the photography much better than it does here. I listened to a podcast recently where they kind of went through the entire production. They were talking about, what this movie actually kind of did for this was like a filmmaker who was trying to push what digital filmmaking can be, especially for the fact he likes filming at night in digital digital cameras work so much better in low light. So you're actually, unlike in Heat where he's having to use like green screens a little bit to be able to get that like horizon and be able to get all those lights in the background, he can now do this in camera because the stuff is really good for it. And in a weird way, because like I kind of like the tone of this movie because this movie takes itself very seriously.
Right.
Like compared to the pilot TV show is definitely very stylized, kind of hammy because it's like you have these two guys and they're out here doing things, but also, they're kind of goofy to each other. And this one, they're just like all business. There's
100%
one
business.
joke.
Absolutely.
And also the plot's really unusually complicated. Like there's a lot of threads. There's, a lot of different locations. Some of the performances work. Some of the performances are kind of weird. And, but at the same time, like the more I've watched this, the more I've just appreciated that it's just going all in on its own thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of movies where I kind of respect when it's just like, this is the movie. We're taking this seriously. We're going to do it all digital photography, mostly at night. We're going to put the camera wherever we goddamn please. And we are just going to just try to push this medium as much as possible.
Yeah.
And as wonky as it is, I now in retrospect find it kind of interesting and also kind of fun to have something that doesn't feel like it needs to like wink, wink, nudge, nudge in order to like for people to enjoy it.
Yeah. The feeling I got when I rewatched this past weekend was my thought going into the rewatch was because I thought I remember this movie being like very dark, like very lit, like darkly lit. That's a weird way to put that. And I remember that being sort of off-putting when I first watched the movie. When I first watched the movie, I was not the biggest fan of it because I had my growing up experience of watching Miami Vice, the show, right? And I really felt like why, and this was before I knew much about movies. So I was not a studied knowing directors and work and all that. And I remember thinking at the time that it came out and I saw it, I was like, why did this movie take itself so overly seriously? I mean, it was just like they for me, they had completely lost the tenor and tone of the show, right? But that was Sergio back then. Now on a rewatch, I begin to appreciate it more because it is so classic man, in terms of what he decides. And I love the way you described it, Kristen, that he went all in and said, this is the movie I'm going to make. And the source material being whatever it is, I'm going to take it and I'm going to give it a whole new twist. And it worked. I really enjoyed it more this time around because I have become such a fan of his overall work. And I really appreciated it. And I was glad to have that second look through a different lens.
Yeah, this movie is the opposite of fan service. This movie basically took the original movie and said, oh, here's a good title for a movie. And then made a movie using the title Miami Vice and general concept to Vice Squad guys. And that's it. Like, that's it. That's the only carryover. and it really works. The for me, this movie is like if Michael Mann just got really mad that he wasn't asked to make Scarface. Like that's what this movie is. It's like Michael Mann was like, Scarface was great, but they made it 20 years too soon, 25 years too soon, and this is how it should look. What it takes from Scarface is just being from South Florida. I can tell you an absolute love of the area. It absolutely perfectly uses every sort of aspect of the area that you could possibly ask for. And then just puts two really grumpy people in charge of an investigation. It's great fun. It's so different from Heat, but it has so many also it hits so many of similar beats that Heat hits. Heat is like incomparable. Like, Heat is just definitely one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Miami Vice is not that, but I think that it really borrows a lot of the sort of the tenor of Heat on the cop side rather than from like the overall sort of familial feeling you get from the De Niro side. And it just works. It really, I don't know. It's you have to go into it though. Just like I'm coming in watching a cop movie in Miami, and I'm not, like it almost does
this with the show.
Yeah, right. It almost does a disservice because honestly, I was annoyed with the soundtrack. That's my only complaint. If you're gonna call yourself Miami Vice, just at least give me like, a little bit of synthesizer. Like, just,
you don't want Audio Slave?
No, I don't. I want to. And especially like I feel like if you're not going to give me synthesizer, then just Tico Taco ya it up the wazoo, and just go lean heavily into samba and we get a little bit of that when they actually move the movie to Cuba, which is fucking balls amazing and but and insane, but it's I don't know, it's a fun movie. It's not a super fun extension of the show, but it's on its own. It's really fun, very good. Not fun in a haha way, but fun in a oh, this is good, enjoyable.
It stands
drama.
up well. Yeah. Kristen, I'm really glad you brought this one because, again, I was telling Paul earlier, this is not one I would have thought to revisit. And now I'm glad I did, and it will go into a rotation. So,
and for everyone, watch the theatrical version, not the director's cut.
Oh, really?
Okay.
The theatrical one is better.
Oh, interesting.
Works much better.
So now I got to see both, Kristen. I got to go back. But I'll start with the theatrical one next time. So, right. No, I'm teasing. All right. Well, thank you, Kristen, for Miami Vice and your spin on it. And so far, we're all in agreement. So, wow, I like that. Which brings us to the one that I will say, when I saw the list, Kristen, this is the one that made me go,
And then I watched it.
And then I watched it.
And we're like, go. Just go.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm gonna be quiet.
Kristen.
Yep. So I saw this in theaters.
Okay.
Loved The Matrix. Matrix was like my favorite movie growing up.
Sure.
Like in that weird age where my parents were like, you know what? You're 10 years old, but we're going to show you Terminator 2 in The Matrix. And I loved it. Like I loved the lore. I loved the whole look. And so when I found out that they're like, okay, their first movie after Matrix is going to be Speed Racer. And I was just like, well, I love anime. This is going to be the fucking best. And so when you watch it, because this was made 2008, 2006?
8. Yep.
So compared to any other movie, this movie is visually insane. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most insane visually movies I have ever seen. And so, of course, a lot of us, an 18-year-old, watching this movie, and this movie I would say is kind of family friendly as long as you don't factor in the hugely anti-capitalism themes with it. But like this was something that like was definitely it was it was trying to market itself as like this is a family friendly movie, and it being so visually insane, like so like everything, like you walk outside and everything is CGI. It is so jarring. That I just hated it. I was just like, what the heck is this crap?
Mhm.
Like this is the opposite of awesome. And then I revisited recently because I've been trying to go through the Wachowskis' work. And I mean, not only have I felt we are so used to these types of movies now, like thinking of like Scott Pilgrim, like a lot of
Mhm.
movies that really riff on the visual aesthetics of like video games, of comic books. Like we've had a lot more, like even Zack Snyder movies, like think like Sucker Punch. Like we've had so many now, so many movies that really push like the limits of like, you know, how crazy that we can make the thing, like we can make everything look, let alone an Avenger movie where they're probably in a blue screen like half the time. That this movie is not only a giant swing, but but like even more so, it is so sincere.
Mm.
Like kind of like with Miami Vice, but with everyone sort of like understands what's happening. Like all of the actors, the main cast, like everyone is committing to this crazy vision, and they're also bringing so much heart to it. Like I cry every single time now I watch this movie. Like in the ending, in the beginning, like I mean, anything that involves the parent telling their child how much they're proud of them like makes me cry.
Oh,
But
Yeah.
like I found that I was just like so overwhelmed by how much this feels like everyone is passionately giving into this movie. Like there's no one sleepwalking. Everyone is like on the same tone, and it just makes me so ridiculously happy. Like I have showed this movie to so many people who either passed it or never even like bothered to watch it or like never even heard of it. And like every single person I've shown it to is just like, this is the most bonkers movie, but at the same time, like so exciting to see something that is this original looking.
Yeah. The thing for me as I watched it, and for me this was the first time, was I want to make sure I can't quote you word for word, but I believe what you said was we have seen so many things like this since that I think that's the reason that I lean more towards enjoying it. It for me, I was thinking of Alita Battle Angel. I was
Yes.
thinking of Sucker Punch. I was thinking of the but had I not already seen those films, I don't think this movie would have resonated with me as well as it did because there are some pretty cringy pieces in terms of plot and dialogue and so forth. But the visual aesthetic, the overall, and I'm like you, I'm like all about family moments that you can relate to, and that's what for me this movie has. I really appreciated. I think it's best that I waited till now to have found it because I may not have I would not originally have enjoyed this because it was so chaotic. It was so just I would have been like, what is happening here? Like, what we Sergio back then would not have appreciated the what feels like chaos coming off the screen. But because I've seen other movies of similar type, to me it was like, oh, okay, well, so this is all about the visuals, the story is there, but it's all about bringing us into a unique world that you're not going to see anywhere else. And I enjoyed it. I really did because I think because I have a frame of reference of other films that I watched. So I'm actually I'm one that can say to add to your list of people that you have introduced it to and who came out liking it. So, but that's me. So
It's unconscionable that they used a real chimp in this movie. And it was unconscionable in 2008, and today it's just like this movie should be put away and never shown to anybody ever again, because it there's just under no circumstances was it okay that they used a real chimp in this movie.
Or have a whole C plot about a kid and his chimp just wanting candy.
Yeah, the use of a real chimp is like, if nothing else had gone wrong in this movie, I would hate this movie because of the use of a real chimp. Okay, put that aside. I love Christina Ricci, Susan Sarandon, and John Goodman in this movie.
Mhm.
They are.
I didn't mention the cast. The cast
To your point, those three so totally buy into what you were just saying. Everything. The lead, Emil Hirsch, is so fucking bad in this movie. He is so terrible. If they could have gotten an actor that could have hung with Christina Ricci, Susan Sarandon, and John Goodman in the buying in and selling what the Wachowskis were trying to portray, which was clear and obvious, like, because Ricci is amazing, and Sarandon and Goodman are both fucking amazing too. But Ricci, he just sucks. He's just terrible. He doesn't have the capacity to play this level of pop kitsch. He just doesn't have it in him. And like, to have your main character be this bad, it's bad.
Paul, if I may, I'm genuinely curious. I promise I'm not. Who would, if you could cast it, who would you say would have been a better fit?
In 2008.
Year 2008. If you could have gotten what's his name? You wouldn't have been able to get him, but shit, I'm so bad with names. So the guy in American History X.
Oh,
Edward Norton.
Ed Norton would have. If you could have gotten Ed Norton to do a zany thing, he would have done it. Like, because he and Christina Ricci both have that sort of really serious side, but Ed Norton, I believe, has a zany side to him, and this would have been a really fascinating thing to see Ed Norton trying to sell that. Outside of that, obviously today Ryan Reynolds, but like whoever Ryan Reynolds equivalent would have been in 2008. Blair's mentioning Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire, no. Maybe he's way too quiet though. No,
I don't like
no.
Toby.
You need somebody that can do something manic here. And the reason why I'm saying Ed Norton is because of Death to Smoochie, by the way. So, like, if you've seen Death to Smoochie, which Kristen's giving me a look that she's never seen Death to Smoochie.
Oh, no, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
I was looking at the chat because I had everything full screen, so I was not looking at comments.
Oh, okay. Ed Norton does a thing in Death to Smoochie that I think would translate over to this pretty well. Honestly, the movie is such a fucking mess. Nobody should have been in it. Honestly, like, the story is so bad. I need the whole story of this movie is just so and I love anything that bags on capitalism, but that's like, then just bag on capitalism. What is Racer X doing in this movie? Like, what is that plot line? I don't like. It's insane. And last but not least, I'm really sorry. If Sin City hadn't been made 3 years earlier, this would have been like, oh, this is really fascinating. But this is basically like the Wachowskis seeing Sin City and saying, oh, we can do this in color and more manic. And then you get Speed Racer. This movie, I'm sorry, Kristen, this movie just totally didn't work for me at all. And
Still
it started with
Wachowski movie.
Yeah, it started with Chim Chim showing up, and they're using a real live chimpanzee. I'm like, I can't. I almost just turned it off right then and there. I was like, I can't get through this. So yeah, I cannot recommend anyone watch this movie because of the use of a real chimpanzee. I'm sorry, not sorry. I don't see how they could do that.
Well, Kristen,
I'm really sorry, Kristen.
No,
I love
your
you.
opinion. Like,
I
you're
love
entitled
you,
to
and
it,
I love your passion, and I love your
understand.
opinion. Yeah,
completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we're not done with your visit yet, but can
We're
I
not.
just take this moment right now, Kristen, to say if when you're able, you can bring us another 3, I would happily have this conversation because
I would,
I,
yeah.
I love your passion for what you're sharing, but also if for this guy, you're introducing us to movies that, either we have opinions on or that in my case I haven't seen.
Yeah.
And so please,
I have at least one that comes to mind.
I hope there's more.
Please, no chimpanzees in it.
No, it's Grease 2.
Oh my god.
Oh
Interesting.
man.
Wow. Okay.
Which I will defend is better than the original.
Okay.
Oh, those who know me know. Okay, real quick. I got a tattoo while that movie was playing, and the tattoo took several hours, and so it played more than once.
Oh my god.
So that might be what sort of tainted my opinion of the film. But I will, Kristen, for you, I will revisit that film. So.
It sounds like you don't need to revisit. You are.
Oh, it's
just look at your tattoo for 2 hours.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I hope we can do this again, Kristen, amidst so many other things we can talk about. But any last thoughts on any of the 3, or you want to land the plane on this since this is your conversation?
Let's land the plane because we have another great movie to talk about.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
And actually,
all
we
right.
have 2 more to talk about. I'm going to be mentioning another one before we get into that one really quick.
Indeed.
Go on, Sergio.
All right. Well, before we get to all of that, we want to remind you where you can find us on social media. So watch this, and we'll be right back with more Real to Real Talk. All right, we are back, and we are going to keep chugging forward. And to the question Blair has in our chat, was it a Grease tattoo? No, it was not. So
it wasn't the pink
I'm pretty
ladies.
sure it was ink.
Oh, but a bump.
That was good. That was good. I was not fast enough on that one. All right. So it is time now for our weekly segments. And so we're going to get to what we call What the Hell Did I Just Watch? Paul, I'll turn it over to
that
you.
movie.
So when I did 8.5, Fellini's 8.5, I did a little bit of research, and there was a movie that was kind of considered, it's like 8.5's kind of follow up, or maybe prequel-ish, or maybe like I read a couple articles that linked 8.5 to Amarcord, and so here I am doing Fellini's Amarcord, and let me tell you, it's a little bit of a wacky movie. The story is that this is basically like Fellini's remembrance of growing up in the 1930s in a coastal town in Italy, and the really weird. So I would probably have said if I had watched this earlier in the week, I probably would have tried to find another movie, because it's really not that strange, honestly. It's not as strange as I thought it was going to be. Some of the stranger parts of the movie are that, like, some of the more interesting parts too, is that the person who the character that he sort of is his avatar in the movie is a guy who's in school. And like the interesting thing about it is like any students that are younger than him, like the guy who's playing him, he's supposed to be like probably like 12, 13, 14, somewhere around that age. The guy who's playing him is probably like 20, 21. All of the kids that are younger than him are played by children. All of the kids that are roughly his age are played by people roughly in their late teens, early 20s. And then any of the children that are older than him are played by people who are clearly adults. And it's really like, so, and they don't really, it takes you a while to get into what's going on with this movie. And it's literally, there is no common thread. It's basically vignettes and sort of stream of consciousness a lot of times of, here's a remembrance. And there are two characters that speak directly to the camera throughout the movie. And they act almost as like unreliable narrators almost, but even stranger, because they're not unreliable narrators. They are the adult, almost like the adult versions of Fellini, but like remembering things as a child. That's the really wacky thing about this movie, is that it is written by an adult trying to think of what would a child write about at the moment of the things going on. Like, you know, your memories that you have as a child right now are not like, you don't necessarily think of things as a child. You think of things, well, that's how I remember it, but you know, it's probably a little different. Whereas this is written like, nope, that's exactly how it was. And like the weirdest scene is like, so it's a sea town, so it doesn't snow a lot. So there was you know, there's one winter where it snows, and they make a big deal out of it, and like they end up turning the entire village into this like crazy snow village where the snow is like 8 feet tall, and like they have to dig pathways around, and it's like just this huge big thing that about it being having snowed. And like one of the unreliable narrators comes in and looks at the screen and says, this was only the 8th time it has snowed in this town in the past 100 years, and he lists the prior 7 times, and then one of the times he says you know, and also in 1905 when it rained in the middle of, or snowed in the middle of July. So it's just, you know, that's really what's going on with, like, all of the adults are very cartoonish. It just feels like a crazy Italian romp that it's not as good as 8.5. So that's really what it is. It's an interesting movie. But I haven't seen a lot of Fellini. If you're gonna see Fellini, definitely go see 8.5. I don't know.
Have you seen Fellini's Satyricon?
I have not. No.
That's the only Fellini I like.
Okay.
You should watch that for What the Hell Did I Just Watch?
Okay. What's it called?
Fellini's Satyricon.
Satyricon. You didn't like 8.5?
I did not like 8.5. Amarcord is fine.
It's just, yeah, it's just like,
so,
it's just wacky more than anything.
Yeah,
you know?
Satyricon is just so overwhelming that I would watch 30 minutes and then have to stop because I had no idea what was happening. But what was happening was distressing.
That sounds like my jam. I'll have to, it's on the list.
Awesome.
Freaked me out.
Well, I'll be looking forward to that, Paul. So make sure that happens. So,
it's on. I'm not going to do it too quick because, you know, got to space them out. But yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, week to week, you can find out what type of weirdness Paul is watching. It's always entertaining. So, Paul, thank you as always for bringing us these interesting titles. All right. It is time for this week's Real Alphabetical, and we are on the letter I. Mm-hmm. And Paul, you brought in a movie called In the Mood for Love.
Yes.
And let me tell you, I'll just start right from the outset. This movie moved me tremendously. The film itself is just equal parts heartbreaking. Yeah. And it is probably the saddest love story that I have seen, you know, I dare say probably my entire life. This was a beautiful film. Okay. The story itself is fantastic. It's very simple and to the point. You know, the two people that meet, everything that works about this film is because of the environment within which these characters arrive. This film, I'm trying to, I'm not. I want to give me 1 second because I'm looking for. I want to say this correctly in terms of where it's set. Um, Hong Kong, I believe. Um, the point is, you have to understand the culture of where they live to understand that they're renting these rooms in such close proximity,
Right.
and how they encounter one another. And I'm so torn about whether I want to reveal the plot because I want people to see this movie.
Sure.
I really, really do.
Mm-hmm.
And once they meet and everything that flows from it, there are so many interesting choices made by Wong Kar-wai in terms of how he presents the story. I don't think this gives anything away, but the fact that you don't see the spouses,
you do, but very tangentially,
right,
briefly.
But their presence is so heavily felt.
Their lack of presence. Their lack of presence.
Sure. But
they
what I'm
leave
saying,
a vacuum. Yeah.
But what I'm saying, but for myself, and I'm going to stay with the phrase I started with because it is so heavily over the story.
Yeah.
And you feel for these two individuals that are brought together by these circumstances, and there is this closeness, but with such a gaping chasm of a divide, you know, and it's I literally watched this. This is okay. This is probably too much information in terms of my movie watching, but I started it on Sunday morning while having breakfast.
Were you getting a tattoo?
No, thank goodness. I was eating breakfast. I was watching the film, and I got to the end of the movie, and I looked at my breakfast plate, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped eating, and so it was a beautiful, mesmerizing film.
Yeah,
that just took me on a ride, and it was gorgeous. I really want people to see this film. It is so beautiful, and it's one of those experiences that, you know, as someone who only in recent years has started to become familiar with, you know, directors and actors and the work that they do, this is the kind of movie that really is a treat for me, because it forces me then to go and read about the history of the film, its production, who was in it, who was involved, and I love that stuff. And so this was a treasure, man. This was a fantastic film. I mean, I want to hear y'all's take, because it was amazing.
Go, Kristen.
Yes.
So I like Wong Kar-wai a little bit. That I have the giant Criterion that has almost all of his movies. I actually own this movie, 3 different copies of it.
Nice.
I think you like it. Is that what you're saying?
I do like
You're
it.
a fan.
Even though this is actually only ranked 4 for me when it comes to Wong Kar-wai movies.
Okay.
I am actually not as over the moon as most people are with this movie. I do really like it. And, you know, some context, Wong Kar-wai is actually the most influential filmmaker for me as a videographer. Like, in terms of, like, I took so many cues from his style, from, like, how he composed things. When I was 14, I saw the sequel to this movie called 2046, because this movie is actually kind of an informal trilogy with Days of Being Wild that he had made a year ago, and 2046 that he made 4 years after this one. And, like, I mean, to me, this is probably my least favorite of the trilogy.
Oh, wow.
So I do really very much like this movie. I remember that compared to some of his other movies, they are like his other movies, I feel like, are visually much more interesting. Whereas this movie, I think, like, compositionally, it's fine, but it didn't really draw me that much. I was kind of confused about the story the first time I watched it, because, like, there's a lot of inference that goes into, like, you know, what's the situation that's going on with these spouses, and like trying to figure this out. So, like, the first time I watched it, I was just like, what's going on? Like, why are they hanging out together? I was 14, so like you could ignore that I was just stupid. And I still really like this movie. I think like it's performed well. Like as I got older, I do resonate a little bit more with this story, and it's like, themes of, longing and how much this like affects both their personal lives as well as their like friendship with each other.
Mhm.
And like you said, it is really, tragic and sad, kind of like how it plays out versus how much you, like the characters, are just like longing for more.
Mhm.
Um, but this is like, I still like it. I love Wong Kar-wai. This is like my fourth favorite Wong Kar-wai movie. I wish like if I have to tell people like to watch one movie, this is the one movie I'm going to tell people. Like
Nice.
everyone across the board I have ever met like really likes this movie. If you're going to watch anything by this director, watch this movie because this is his most accessible.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, this is almost like a horror movie. I mean, it's just the gaping vacuum of emotion that exists with this movie just sucks the air out of the room, and it's so tense. It is so tense to watch this movie and watch these two people trying to navigate their lives without being together. Like it's like, oh my God, how do you like just no, look in front of you. It's like, but you can't yell because they're not yelling, and it's like get out of the room. There's somebody gonna stab you. It's just an absolute emotional wrecking ball, this movie. And it's because the characters are required to handle their situation with far more grace than you would ever see in a movie. And that's really what it is. And I don't know if this movie resonates as well, potentially with other cultures, because it's like, okay, this is just, is this a cultural thing? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if this plays up towards cultural stereotypes, or if it really is kind of like, this is how people, are in this scenario, in this place, are supposed to deal with this situation. I don't know. And but as an artifact of the sort of the cultural introduction that we're getting here, it's shocking in its lack of shockingness. It's like, that's the other thing is that, like, the complete lack of either of these individuals to react in a way that you just are watching and thinking in your head, I would so like throw a plate across the room right now, and like they don't throw the plate across the room, and they just continue to eat and wait for their spouse to come home, maybe, and it's
there's that one, the rehearsal scene where her reaction is met with the comment, "That's not a reaction." That is such a telling piece of what you're describing, and so this movie was nominated for the Palme d'Or at Cannes that year, and it won. Tony Leung picked up Best Actor for that performance, and I thought they were both brilliant. They were both brilliant. After the show, Chris, I'm going to send you a little video clip. You may have already seen it. I won't spoil it right now, but I came across something actually today, sort of randomly, that I shared with Paul that I think you'll love if you haven't seen it regarding this film. So,
awesome.
So Paul, you've hit another home run in the real alphabetical process here. So this series continues to be a whole lot of fun for me. And Kristen, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the film as well.
Thank you for having me. I had known we were going to do this for a while, and I was so excited.
Yay!
Excellent. Well, I will forever forever say that you have a spot with us here, Kristen. It's always an honor to have you.
Sure.
You bring such tremendous insight, and your passion is contagious. So thank you so much for making time for us here on the show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we
All
look
the
forward
time,
to next time. So
anytime.
stay in touch,
Please.
and we will see you real soon. All right.
You.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Always a pleasure having
Yeah.
Kristen Smith join us. Kristen is so fantastic. And Paul, I hope that we can get to do this again, because
I hope so.
I have a feeling that she's
getting
got a
Kristen
whole-
to commit, to give us her time is her time's valuable, and so we're really lucky when we get it. So
Indeed.
I felt really bad about how much I just loathed Speed Racer, though, but that's okay.
Hey, well, we share our thoughts, but we let people make their own decisions.
Yep.
So we do encourage you to watch the films that we've talked about so far tonight. Speaking of folks that we've enjoyed having on the show, I just want to throw a quick shout out, if I may,
Sure,
to someone who we both love dearly, Susan Chisholm, who is has been on hiatus from the show due to her schooling.
Mm-hmm.
I think you saw recently, Paul, she's just about done. She's finished her coursework and is working on clinicals and is so close to the finish line. So here, on behalf of Paul and I, Susan, we just want to congratulate you, and we look forward to hearing from you again when you've got the time. But kudos to you for just doing the thing that you set out to do. So, All right, Paul, it is time for some real quick reviews. We've got 2 on the docket here today, and we're going to start with a little movie called The Woman King. I say that jokingly because it is not a little movie. It is quite a film. And so we're going to start with The Woman King. Viola Davis' latest tour de force performance in a film that for me, gosh, I don't even know where to start other than to say this one for me was a blend of strong action, good story, and yet I kind of walked out of it going, it didn't go quite the way I thought it was going to. John Bogoya's character is sort of like, oh, okay. He was just what he was. I expected a twist that never came.
Oh, okay.
So, not sure if that makes sense.
No, sure. And here, the thing I want to say about this movie is that it is a perfect summer blockbuster, and we're not in summer anymore. This is a movie that should have been released middle of June, so before July 4th, after the May rush, and pre 2020 would have made, $300 to $400 million at the box office, because it's just it's just a banging movie, man. It just absolutely hits. It's not like it's not what you expect, because it's a pretty straightforward action flick. It is. It tones down any preconceived ideas of what you have about what this movie's overarching message is going to be. It tones that down from this is going to be just straight up message. It's not really. It's very much just here, we're going to tell you the story and enjoy. And here are some awesome characters, and we don't need a twist.
Right? Yeah.
You're so used to these Netflix movies that are mediocre with bad twists, and it's it just doesn't need it. This is the one we did last week with Queen Latifah. It's just there was a twist in that movie, but it's just we don't need that. This movie does away with it, and it just presents a really good action, straight down the line action flick, and bravo. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. There was a point in this film where you know there's going to be action. When the action happens, it is so well filmed and so well put together that you you come out of the experience feeling like the best way I can describe it is you're exhilarated, but you're thankful that it didn't lean too heavily into, like you said, message versus story.
Right.
Because as we often do, you go back and you read sort of what things are based on, and there's so much that they could have gone or could have done. But they chose to tell the story they wanted to tell.
Right.
It features Viola Davis so beautifully. And her supporting cast, Paul, is brilliant.
Everybody's good. It's
really,
just, it's top of the line.
I'm gonna mess this up, but I need to say her name because Tuso Mbedu as Nawi, the young girl who, was brought to the camp by her father, to the palace by her father to give her away. Her arc in this film, very simply a simple story, but one that is familiar. But her performance is just really so powerful. Good. This was a fun film.
And shout out to Viola Davis, who the last time we saw her in a movie, I think, was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and just physically could not appear as two different people. Ma Rainey and her character here. Just
she is a treasure. Viola Davis is. So here on the show, as people know, we give a 5 taco rating to movies. A movie can get as many as 5 tacos. We want to throw extra guac, that's fine. Paul, for The Woman King, available in theaters, what is your rating?
Yeah, just straight down the line, 4 tacos. It's just, yes, I'm here for it. I want more movies like this. 4 tacos.
Excellent. I'm going to go with guac on my 4 tacos because, again, the beauty of the cast, Lashana Lynch was her character Zogi was so just beautifully portrayed. There was just so much great acting that I got to give it to guac. Really encourage folks to go check out this movie, The Woman King, available in theaters, and you will not be disappointed. All right, with that, we're going to get to our final real quick review, and we're going to talk about a film that for me was like, oh gosh, I was excited to see how they run, and then it felt very British. Not a slight,
very British.
Yeah, and what I mean by that, Paul, is here's a movie that had such comedic beats to it, and it's a send up of your Agatha Christie mysteries, and so beautifully put together. I loved this movie, but wow, there was points where I was like, the pacing seems off. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay.
It played out with, for me, what I felt were like weird beats.
Interesting.
But it was fun. I really did enjoy it.
I irrationally loved this movie.
Okay.
I was the only person in a movie in the theater last night watching it.
There were 4 of us, 2 and 2.
And I was laughing out loud throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad nobody else was, because they definitely would have thought I was a maniac. The cast is just bonkers. The cast of this movie. It opens with voiceover from Adrian Brody. And that is
so great in this film.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
And people have to see this movie. Go see this damn movie.
It's so wonderful.
It's basically an Agatha Christie comedy, and it's loosely based on the play The Mousetrap, and it's a play within a play within a play. Because the play, it's about the running of The Mousetrap. There's a joke in there that is so inside baseball and so hilarious, that where they're trying to make a movie of The Mousetrap. By the way, nobody's ever made a movie of The Mousetrap. Nobody has made an English language direct version of The Mousetrap before.
Yep.
Okay, so the producer who was getting the rights to make the movie The Mousetrap signed a contract that said he could not begin production until 6 months after the end of the initial run of The Mousetrap, the play. And he's like, "Well, this is going to be a problem. I don't know. This sounds weird." And then the woman who owns the theater is like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's a whodunit. It's not going to last. It's not a big deal." And the joke being that the Mousetrap was the longest continuously running play of like all time. And so its first run just like never ended. And so even if the hijinks of the movie had never happened, like he would have never been able to actually make his movie based on that requirement in his contract. But it's so funny. It literally, like, the ending is just perfect because of the beginning being perfect, and it's the whole movie is just a complete perfect circle, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Fantastic. Back to your thought about the cast. Saoirse Ronan is quietly building a career full of just great performances.
Yeah.
And we get to see her comedic side in this one.
Yeah.
And if I have a ding on this film, if there's one thing that I would say is a minus.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost it the guac.
Okay.
You got Sam Rockwell, man. You got to make him dance. But
did he not dance?
No, not in this one. I think this is really only the second film in which, probably maybe more, but it's just such a Rockwell thing. And it was funny because when I saw the trailer and you see you hear the music of the time, you're like, surely we're gonna get something. But no, he was fantastic as well, and they were so great together. So great together.
Yes.
So Paul, for myself, beats or not, I'm just gonna say it because I will be rewatching this one.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm generous. This is 5 strong tacos for me. I really love this movie.
And I'm giving it the guac. I loved this. I loved every damn thing about this movie.
Yeah.
And it clocks in at a nice tidy 140, I think. Yeah, it clocks in at 140. It's gonna come to a streamer near you. It's coming to Hulu at some point. Watch it, enjoy it, love it. It's fantastic. So great. So, all right. Well, I'm glad that we are in agreement there that this was a movie that needs to get more attention. Darn it, please.
It breaks my heart.
I know it really does.
But such is life in 2022 as we continue this journey throughout the rest of this year. Paul, we're heading towards some big stuff. I'm a big fan of the latest Wakanda Forever trailer.
Yeah.
With the music that plays over it is so beautiful.
Yeah. No woman, no cry.
Yeah, man. I tell you, I remember the very first time I've seen it in theaters now 4 or 5 times, and every time I'm like, this is such a perfect choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's coming up pretty soon. And interestingly enough, on a completely separate but similar note, Regal Entertainment is doing a mystery movie on Monday the 26th for $5. They're not telling you what the title is.
Wow.
They're not telling you. You go and you find out. I am part of their Regal bonus program or whatever. Regal Unlimited, and so I got it for 54 cents. So
nice.
So one of the things I'll share with you next week on the show is what the movie ended up being. So
interesting. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul, what are we looking forward to?
Next week we're doing we're bringing back international release, American remake. Good Night Mommy was a Austrian movie made, I don't know when, a little while ago, and they just released a remake on Amazon. So starring Naomi Watts. So we're gonna do a compare and contrast on that.
Love it.
We've got the movie that is supposed to be a debacle, but we'll judge for ourselves. The Don't Worry, Darling is coming out.
Oof. Looking forward to it.
And I haven't mentioned this to you, but I might try to go see Moon Age Daydream tomorrow night.
Okay. Gotcha.
And in IMAX. So if I do that, I'll tell everybody about.
Let me know. Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy it is because it looks crazy.
Yeah, it does. And that's the kind of stuff we like to talk about around here.
Big deal.
So, all right. Well, It's a lot to look forward to. So
Yeah.
we say thank you to all of you for always hanging out. One last opportunity for us to say thank you to Kristen for joining us. We look forward to having her back.
Big time. Thank you.
And yeah, we're going to continue chugging right along. So to all of you out there, we love you. We thank you. And we remind you, you are awesome. You're amazing. And the world's a better place because you are in it. We will see you next time on Real